All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a 3,000-year-old epic that has completely enthralled the world, the story of Jason and the Argonauts. Now, you probably think you know the tale, right? A glorious quest for the fabled Golden Fleece, packed with grit, magic, and heroism. But as we'll see when we look closely at the most authentic version of this myth from the 3rd century BC, it actually reveals a deeply dark, complex reality behind one of mythology's most famous adventures. But before we get to the monsters and the impossible tasks, I really want you to keep this one question in mind. What actually happens to the hero after the adventure ends? We're so conditioned to expect the hero to go on a quest, get the prize, and just win the day. But the ending of this tale completely subverts that happily ever after trope. The journey of Jason is honestly just as much about divine manipulation and devastating human flaws as it is about heroism. Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, A Stolen Throne. Prophecies, usurpers, and a goddess's revenge.
So, the backstory here is just incredibly messy. Decades ago in the land of Iolcus, King Cretheus dies. Shortly after, a guy named Pelias maliciously usurps the throne from his half-brother, the rightful heir Aeson, and throws him right into prison. Aeson's wife secretly gives birth to Jason, and fearing for the baby's life, she sends him away to be raised in hiding by a centaur, a half-man, half-horse tutor. Fast forward 20 years, and a fully grown Jason is finally setting out to return to Iolcus and reclaim his stolen kingdom.
Now picture this. A seemingly mundane event is about to fulfill a terrifying prophecy. King Pelias had previously gone to an oracle and was explicitly told, "Beware of a man with one sandal." Meanwhile, on his walk back to the city, Jason helps an old woman cross a rushing river and accidentally loses one of his shoes in the mud. So he arrives at the city with one bare foot, which absolutely shocks King Pelias to his core. But here is the crazy secret. That old woman Jason helped, that was actually the queen of the gods, Hera, in disguise. Because of this, we actually have two completely different motives driving this entire epic. On one hand, you have Jason's quest. To get rid of him, Pelias promises to give Jason the throne, but only if he can retrieve the fabled Golden Fleece from Colchis, which is basically an impossible suicide mission. But behind the scenes, you have Hera's vengeance. Years prior, Pelias murdered his stepmother right at goddess Hera's altar and banned her worship. So Hera wants blood, and she's simply using Jason as the delivery mechanism for her wrath. Jason thinks he's fighting for his birthright, but he's literally just an unwitting pawn. Moving on to Section 2, Assembling the Argonauts, the ultimate roster, and the mighty Argo. So, to pull this off, they need a ship. But the Argo wasn't just a boat. It was an absolute marvel of ancient engineering. Built by the master shipwright Argos with actual help from the goddess Athena, this thing was 22 meters long, crafted from incredibly sturdy oak and pine, and rowed by 50 oars. It was uniquely designed so the mast, rudder, and oars could be removed to haul the ship ashore, preventing theft. But the absolute coolest feature, the Dodona. It was a magical piece of speaking timber given by Zeus himself, affixed to the prow, that acted as an ancient GPS compass to plot their course by the stars. And to man this magnificent beast of a ship, Jason assembled 50 of the greatest warriors in Greece, essentially creating an ancient mythological superhero team-up. On this roster, you've got absolute legends. Hercules, with his unmatched strength, Castor and Polydeuces, the expert boxers, Orpheus, whose music was literally magical, and of course, Argos the shipwright. They called themselves the Argonauts. With this ultimate crew, they cast off, seeking glory. Let's see how this plays out in Section 3, Perils of the Voyage, Monsters, Mutiny, and Clashing Rocks. Right out of the gate, the adventure takes a surprisingly bizarre turn on the island of Lemnos. For a long time, Lemnos had only been inhabited by women. Why? Well, because they failed to worship Aphrodite, the goddess cursed them with a horrible body odor. Their husbands couldn't stand the smell and abandoned them, so the furious women murdered every single male on the island. It's a darkly comedic detour where the Argonauts are welcomed with open arms, and Jason even stays long enough to father twins with the local queen. And this perfectly highlights how staggering and unpredictable these myths can be. Shortly after, the crew lands on the coast of Mysia. Hercules goes into the woods, and his squire Hylas goes to fetch water, only to get bewitched by a water nymph and pulled into the depths. Hercules is so heartbroken he simply refuses to leave the woods. Just like that, they lose the strongest man in all of Greece over a completely mundane side quest. It almost causes a mutiny until a sea god pops up to tell them, hey, it's the will of the gods to leave him behind. Without Hercules carrying the team, the pacing of this voyage just goes into absolute overdrive. In a rapid-fire series of encounters, they fight six-armed earth monsters, and in the chaos of a dark night, accidentally kill a friendly king. Polydeuces has to win a lethal fistfight, they chase away winged harpies to save a blind seer, they narrowly navigate the simple Gades' gigantic clashing rocks by sending a white dove through as a decoy, and they drive off bronze-feathered Stymphalian birds by violently beating their swords against their shields. The sheer epic scale of what they had to survive just to reach their destination is mind-blowing. Which brings us to Section 4, Securing the Golden Fleece. Impossible tasks in Colchis. So they finally arrive, but King Aedes is absolutely furious and has zero intention of handing over his greatest treasure. He designs a 3-step suicide mission. Step 1, Jason must yoke 2 fire-breathing, bronzed-hoofed bulls. Step 2, plow a field and plant it with dragon's teeth. Step 3, fight off the deadly earthborn warriors that instantly sprout from those seeds. Jason agrees, but he knows full well that, realistically, only Hercules could have survived this. Enter the gods. Again, Hera sees Jason is totally doomed, so she pulls the strings. She forces Eros to shoot an arrow into Medea, King Aedes' own daughter and a tremendously powerful sorceress, making her fall madly in love with Jason. The crucial takeaway here is that Jason only completes these impossible tasks because Medea sneaks him a magic ointment that makes him fireproof and gives him the tactical secret to defeat the Earth Warriors by tossing a stone among them, so they destroy each other. Without her, his quest ends right here. Now for Section 5, the deadly journey home. Magic, murder, and sirens. Okay, so Medea helps Jason steal the fleece, but on the condition that he marries her and takes her away. Together, her sorcery and Orpheus's music put the sleepless dragon guarding the fleece to sleep. They grab the prize and run, but King Aedes and Medea's brother chase them across the sea. This is where the story takes a remarkably dark, gritty turn. To distract her father and stop the pursuit, Medea brutally murders her own brother, dismembers him, and throws him into the sea. The morally complex, horrific lengths she goes to for Jason are just chilling. Because of that horrific murder, Zeus is furious. The ship is blown vastly off course, forcing the crew to survive a terrifying gauntlet to get home. Orpheus has to physically outsing the deadly sirens to save the crew. The sea goddess Thetis has to personally guide them past the monsters Scylla and Charybdis. When a giant bronze man named Talos attacks them in Crete, Medea uses dark magic to shatter his single ankle vein and bleed him dry. An Argonaut even miraculously creates the island of Santorini by tossing a magical clod of earth into the ocean. It is an exhausting, mythic sprint to the finish line. Finally, let's look at the fallout in Section 6, A Hero's Tragic End, the true cost of Hera's vengeance. Jason arrives home, hands over the fleece, and immediately learns the horrible truth. King Pelias has already killed his father. Jason swears revenge and turns to Medea, who pulls off an incredibly gruesome trick. She chops up an old ram, boils it in a cauldron, and uses magic to pull out a young living sheep. She then convinces King Pelias' daughters that they can restore their aging father's youth if they perform the exact same ritual on him. They believe her, and they end up murdering their own father. Hera's ultimate goal of vengeance is finally fulfilled. But it's a completely hollow victory. Jason went through all of those deadly adventures to become king, but immediately the citizens of Iolcus, terrified of Medea the sorceress, reject her as their queen. Jason is forced to give up the kingdom to Pelias' son and flee into an uneventful exile in Corinth. All of it for nothing. And this is where human hubris and deceit completely ruin everything. In Corinth, Jason grows tired of his life and attempts the ultimate betrayal. He decides to dump Medea so he can marry a younger Corinthian princess. Medea, who gave up everything and destroyed kings for this man, is absolutely inconsolable. In response, she goes scorched earth. She murders the new princess and then commits the unthinkable. She murders her own 3 young children just to punish Jason before escaping. It is a devastating tragedy. The tragic arc of our hero ends in such a stark, devastating contrast to how it began. He started with a glorious, shining ship departing alongside the greatest, most hopeful heroes of Greece. But in the end, Jason's life is ruined. He's an old, lonely, depressed man, sitting next to the rotting hull of his beloved Argo. As he asks Zeus for mercy, a rotting beam suddenly snaps, falls, and crushes him to death. He doesn't die in a blaze of glory. He's literally crushed by the decaying symbol of his past triumphs.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I leave you to ponder this. The story of Jason and the Argonauts is thrilling, absolutely. But beneath the surface, it's a masterclass in manipulation. In a world ruled by divine vengeance, magic, and devastating human hubris, how much free will did the captain of the Argo actually have? Was he a true hero, or just a disposable pawn in Hera's game? Thanks for joining me today. Take this question with you and keep exploring the incredible truths hidden inside our oldest myths.